Hello everyone, this is Tailspin109, and today I thought I'd do something a little different. 2022 has recently passed, and it has been pretty much the most productive year for me with animation, both in terms of quality and quantity. I have gotten out far more Sonic SFM animated content in 2022 than I ever have in any of my other years. I nearly doubled my animation output just this past year, and also from a quality perspective, I'd say these animations are the best they have ever looked, bar none. I've gotten so much better at this within the past 4 years, and with the amount I got out and how much higher quality they generally are, I figured it would be fun for me to kind of rank them. What, you never heard of a creator ranking his own content? Come on. I'm still a human being too, and I'm going to rank the animations I made in 2022 from my least favorite to favorites, basically worst to best. Now, just because I'm the creator, that doesn't mean you have to take my opinion as fact. If you have your own opinion on what the ranking is, just place it in the comment below. Maybe we can have a little discussion and such. Maybe. And, well, I shouldn't really include the livestream animation result. That's gonna have to go number 6 if I did, just because it's only 10 seconds long and really doesn't have anything to offer. But with that, let's actually get into the big stuff. I wouldn't call any of the animations I put out this year bad. I'd say they're all quite good and definitely have something to enjoy. But of the ones I've made this year, I would probably say Tails' Sickness is probably the weakest of the 5 I generally outputted in 2022. It follows Sonic trying to take care of Tails, who has suddenly gone sick, and he has to figure out what he's going to do to care for Tails. And, well, I don't know too much about how to take care of someone sick, so all I really was able to come up with was like medicine, a story, and soup, and yeah, that stuff helps, but there's probably more out there, and I didn't know too much, so I'm afraid that sometimes this episode can seem a little lacking at times, and the pacing a little sluggish at times, specifically when Tails is left all alone. I probably could have done a little more with the camera work there, just because time seems to pass with nothing really happening. At the same time, though, this is not all bad. I'd say I did a pretty darn good job at making Tails look sick. This was the first time I ever tried this, and I think it came out quite well. And the heart is still there. There's still plenty of precious little moments between Sonic and Tails that are definitely going to give a smile. Sonic's monologue at the end is a pretty big example of that. And though Sonic does show a bit of rage, it also shows how quickly he can be to realize his lack of patience and even acknowledge it. So I think it still sets the characters up pretty nicely. It's just that I just don't think it holds up as well. It feels a little slow, and I don't feel like this really has the best resolution at the end. I wasn't exactly sure where to end it, and I think the very end of it does kind of show that. There's still a lot to enjoy here. Sonic and Tails still have a lot of precious moments together. I think I did a good job of making Tails sick. There's still plenty of stuff to make you smile. I just don't think it really holds up as much compared to my other animations this past year. Coming up at number 4, I'm going to place in The Ghostly Howl. Another one of my shorts from the year, and I do think this one holds up a bit better than Tails' Sickness. This one involves Tails getting ready to go to sleep, excited for what may await him in the morning, only to hear a creepy howling sound coming from his room. In fear, he goes to Sonic for help, who plans to figure out what the sound is once and for all. This is another simple, innocent little story, placing Tails kind of at the forefront here, with Sonic, of course, being the protective big brother figure that he is. Again, I feel like this displays a lot of the small little emotional moments that I really like to set up with these two as a big brother taking care of basically a little toddler. I feel like there's a lot of really cute moments here with Sonic fooling around a little bit, but still trying to treat Tails very sincerely and understanding. and I think this works pretty darn nicely here, and the pacing is, in my opinion, a little better. This was also the animation where I realized how much I love shooting nighttime scenes. I just love using that dark blue lighting, and I find it easier to balance the lighting here, as I think the lighting here does a pretty darn good job. I really like the way it looks in this one. Well, excuse me. And aside from that, I kind of liked the sound work here. Doing the howling winds was pretty darn fun. I used this little, application online where I could adjust the scaling of the intensity of the wind, and I think it holds up pretty nice and adds a little something to the atmosphere that not many other animations that I've created have. It's still a bit on the simple side, so of course it's not going to reach the heights of some of my other works, but this one is pretty cute, and I think it has a better resolve than Tales of Sickness, which is definitely one of the things that pushes this higher up for me. At number 3, I'm putting down my most recent animation, Sonic and Tails' Jingle Bell Ride. A cute little animation where Sonic and Tails have a fun sleigh ride together, going through the tune of Jingle Bells. This was actually directly inspired from the version of Jingle Bells used in the Disney sing-along song on VHS. It's my favorite version of Jingle Bells, and I copied it pretty closely, almost as a tribute to that. But of course I threw in a couple of my own spins on how things play out. Now the reason this is at number 3, I was going to have this at number 4 for the longest time, but I changed my mind just because I just think this animation is so adorable. I think it's the cutest animation I ever made. This one just gives me a goofy smile on my face every time I go through it. I feel like Sonic and Tails here are at their most precious from anything I've ever made before, especially towards the end. It's just so beautiful and adorable, and it gives me that fuzzy feeling inside that I just had to bump this up to number 3. Of course, this is still basically a Christmas animation, so now I have to wait till next Christmas season to watch it again. Yeah. I don't think it's any surprise that the 2 Tales That Bond episodes are in these top 2 spots. These 2 animations are without a doubt the most involved ones I've ever made, and they are essentially my dream project, so I put a lot of passion and effort into this, and I really feel like with all the animations I made, it really shows in these the most. The question is just a matter of which of these 2 episodes are going to take what spot, and for the runner-up position, I am going to go with the Tales That Bond Episode 1, Destiny. This animation is basically my take on Tails' origin story and how he would meet Sonic. Of course, taking it in the most emotional roller coaster of a path that I possibly could imagine up. Of the animations I have made, I tend to think that this one is probably the best shot of the animations I've made. I feel like the cinematography is the most on point here. And the atmosphere, I feel like, is the best that I've ever made. The sunset look for the city portions early on in the animation, I feel work really well, just for the state that Tails is in. Honestly, the orange sunlight is almost like beaming fire on Tails, just like everyone else is there. I didn't really intend that, but I think it works very well and creates a nice contrast for the forest when it's nighttime. This almost makes it look desolate and isolated, lonely as Tails feels by that point, until he meets Sonic. And also, the rain, while it was a pain to deal with, I feel like added a nice look to this portion and almost made things feel maybe a little closer throughout. It was very interesting for me writing Sonic in this one since he doesn't know Tails yet, so I had to try and go something closer to what you normally see with this character. And though this was kind of a new thing for me, I think I generally handled it pretty well, and Sonic still shows his sympathetic side. I feel like I did a pretty good job at creating this feeling of just how much Sonic believes in the value of justice here. And it definitely makes him very likable all the same, despite the fact that we're not seeing him and treating Tails the exact same way we normally see him. Because again, this is their first interaction. And I think I did a pretty good job at slowly building up to the decision that Sonic would make that would, of course, change the course of their entire life. I think it went through pretty nicely. I suppose a couple of moments can be kind of slow, but it's rather minimal, and I think it still holds itself up quite nicely. The soundtrack, which this was a new thing for me to include, and I think can add quite a bit to these, while it can be a little sparse, I still think it gets the job done just nicely. It hits all of the emotional beats, which I feel the dialogue does quite nicely as well. This is definitely something that holds up very well, and I think it's a very promising start to what I hope will be a long-running and wonderful series. And of course, it did, in my opinion, get better. And I say that because number 1 is the Tales That Bond Episode 2 Revelation. This picks up directly after the Tales That Bond Episode 1. And I think the quality climbs up with it. In this one, we see Sonic trying his best to take care of Tails, who is in an incredibly dire state. All through this, he's trying to figure out what exactly he's going to do with the kid, as he's not exactly sure. He's never stopped to take care of a kid before, and he most certainly doesn't think he can really pull it off. But this is all in the back of his mind. While episode 1 was about Tails, this one is more about Sonic, and it's really the first time I truly get to go into his mind and kind of make him seem a little more complex than what we might see within his cool, calm exterior. Of all the animations I made, I'd probably say this is probably the best written and also the best paced of all the animations I ever made. I don't feel like there's one single moment that feels wasted. It almost feels like everything here has a purpose. Yes, even the bathroom scene, I think that adds a little bit of levity to the situation and makes sense while Sonic is showing around the house. And the emotional scenes probably hit their highest peak so far as of here. The ending sequence is quite possibly one of the most emotionally draining things I ever made, and I think is also where the voice acting starts to shine at its highest. It better. I threw out my voice for a week after doing that. But it's still good memories good memories all the way. Let's just say that. I'm losing my words here. But I think everything works very well here. The interactions are still clearly showing that Tails is still not incredibly comfortable, but is almost, honestly by this point, more desperate that Sonic will finally be the one that will take care of him, because if this didn't work out, he wasn't going to trust anyone ever again. And I feel like I did a pretty good job at transitioning to this moment where they decide to become brothers. At least I think I made it as emotional as I possibly could, which was definitely the whole point. I wanted to treat this episode more like a gradual build-up in the emotional factor, almost treated like a suspenseful factor, just gradually builds up until the final act. And I feel like I did a very good job with that here. While there were still bits here and there, it just gave you more to build up upon, so every time you hit a new scene, the impact hit harder. And I think that's part of what makes this animation so special compared to all the ones I've made. I definitely think this is the best animation I made in 2022, and here's hoping I will be able to continue that in 2023, with episode 3 coming up next. If I can ever get it out of development hell. But those are my thoughts on the animations I made for 2022. If you want to give your ranking, please put it down in the comments below. And be respectful about it. Don't attack anyone for opinions. I'm the creator of these animations, so you must do what I say. But until then, this has been TailsFan 109. I hope you've enjoyed this little ranking video. Have a nice day, and here's to a great 2023. I'm improving. This stuff isn't easy.